Today we're taking a look at some NHL trade rumors involving the Buffalo Sabres and Jack Eichel. We have an article with 5 proposals for trades. I want to take a look at those and see what everybody thinks is the best deal. We also have some free agent rumors around Frederik Andersen of the Maple Leafs, some more NHL award finalists are announced, some signings, and more. We'll jump into all the latest news coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. Now, as I mentioned, we have a lot to cover here today. Before we jump into a lot of the other news, I just want to take a minute here and talk about a story that I've just learned about here in the last little while. Apparently, there was a situation that arose in Montreal after Game 4 versus the Winnipeg Jets. There was a Winnipeg Jets fan at the game. I'm sure there was more than one, but there's one particular who ended up getting basically kind of like physically assaulted outside of the arena after the game. There was a bunch of Montreal fans were taunting him, punching him, ripping his jersey off, and he ended up giving them the jersey because they wanted to take it from him. And it's just overall bad scene, made a really horrible, terrible experience for him. Afterwards, the story became public on social media, and I also learned that Montreal Canadiens owner Jeff Molson actually has reached out to this fan and intends on replacing their jersey as well, and I think he's throwing in some other Montreal Canadiens merchandise too. So nice on the Habs owner, of course, to kind of make things right and replace everything. Of course, it's not really their duty to do that. It's not their fault or anything, but and obviously I don't think you can say, like, Montreal fans are all, like this. However, sometimes you get, a bad reputation based on a small group. So obviously this small group of Habs fans that were attacking this young man, obviously is kind of disgusting and disgraceful. It's not something you want to be able to feel safe when you attend a hockey game. It should not matter what jersey you wear. I can attest to the fact that personally, when I've been to games, that if you're wearing an away jersey or you're not wearing the home team jersey, it can be a little bit intimidating in some markets. But I personally have been to Habs games and I've worn the other jersey and I've never had any issues. So obviously I don't think this is something that occurs a lot, but it's nice to see the Habs owner reach out and try to make things a little bit better for the young man. So hopefully we don't hear of any more of these types of situations taking place. Now, we did learn our finalists for the Hart Trophy this year. It's Connor McDavid of the Edmonton Oilers, Austin Matthews of the Toronto Maple Leafs, and Nathan MacKinnon of the Colorado Avalanche. Now, I have no doubt Connor McDavid will win this award hands down. However, I do feel these top 3 players probably all deserve to be there. I have no issues with any of the nominations. They're 3 of the most dominating players in the game. There's certainly a few other names you could probably throw out there in consideration as well, but obviously these 3 guys certainly all deserve to be there. But my suspicion here is that McDavid wins, and he wins by a fair margin when the awards are actually handed out. We also got word that the Edmonton Oilers have re-signed forward Devon Shore to a 2-year contract with an average annual value of $850,000. Devon Shore was slated to become a RFA this offseason, so that will no longer be the case. And we also learned that Oilers forward Gaetan Haas will be leaving the Edmonton Oilers organization and heading back to Switzerland, where he played previously, and is joining a team there on a 5-year contract. So his NHL career is likely coming to an end here. I would imagine with that long of a term signing to go back to the Swiss League that he'll likely finish out his hockey playing days over in Switzerland. So a couple of Oilers notes there for you today. And we also got word that Toronto Maple Leaf defenseman Martin Marincin is actually leaving the Leafs organization as well, has signed back home in the Czech Republic. I mean, Marty Marincin's been with the Leafs, it feels like a really long time, never really became a regular, was quite often a number 7 guy or somebody who went up and down, NHL, AHL, a little bit in and out of the lineup. Obviously, there were times he played more than others, but certainly his time in the NHL appears to be over, and he's signed in the Czech Republic, so he'll be off the Leafs roster as well. And then, of course, we got news from the Vancouver Canucks that they did finally take care of a lot of their other assistant coaches and kind of rounded out their coaching staff, and they also brought in Brad Shaw, who formerly worked with John Tortorella in Columbus, so he joins the Canucks staff as well. I mean, Shaw's a great wealth of knowledge, been around the game a long time, so he had a terrific addition to Travis Green's coaching staff. Also on the Canucks, it is believed that we could get some announcements here sooner than later when it comes to making things official here with the Sedins, possibly joining the organization, and Elliot Friedman's making note here that RFAs Pettersson and Hughes, those contracts might not be too far away from being put together as well. So we could get lots of Canucks news coming here in the not too distant future. Now, as I mentioned as well, we have some rumors regarding potential free agent goaltender here Freddie Andersen, currently of the Toronto Maple Leafs. Now, of course, he's not officially a free agent yet, but essentially the season's over. Of course, the Leafs will still hold his rights here until free agency officially kicks in, so they have first dibs on talking to him about a new deal, but it just doesn't really make sense to me that Andersen return to the Maple Leafs. Clearly, he's not going to want to take too much of a pay cut, but you know what? He's likely going to have to based on how his last season went, unless a team is willing to offer more money based on his past performance. And even though Freddie Andersen hasn't had really any serious playoff success, he has been a pretty good and solid regular season goaltender for the bulk of his NHL career. This past season was a little bit different in terms of how things went. Different schedule. Obviously, he had some injuries, and really things didn't go all that well for Freddie with the Leafs. But however, he's still a guy that's going to get some interest out there, especially with a lot of teams kind of looking for answers around potential starting goaltenders. Now, it's believed right now that the Pittsburgh Penguins are going to be expressing interest if and when he hits the open market, which many believe is going to happen. Like, the only way he could stay in Toronto, he'd have to sign for a really cheap contract, like $1 to $2 million, and I just don't see that happening. Campbell's obviously taken over the starting job, and the Leafs are going to have to search for another candidate to be their backup. That to me only makes the most sense. His time in Toronto was for the most part pretty decent. Obviously, minus the playoff success, everything else went well. But I think it's time for Freddie and the Leafs both to move on here. And if Pittsburgh is interested, then clearly he could likely be the starting goaltender there. Many believe that he could end up, maybe replacing Tristan Jarry. It's not really clear yet what their plans are for him. Jarry very well could be traded, which is highly suspected and rumored right now. But if they do that, then perhaps it would be Casey DeSmith being the backup. Or maybe DeSmith is the one that's moved, and maybe Jarry and Andersen would do more of a 1A, 1B scenario. That very well could be the case as well. It's not 100% given that Tristan Jarry is traded just here yet, but obviously it depends on what else they do in the offseason. I think the Penguins are going to be a team that's going to be somewhat busy after another disappointing early exit after a pretty good regular season. I'm sure Ron Hextall and Brian Burke are going to be looking to make some changes here. So Freddie Andersen, though, is on the radar. So we'll see if anything comes more of that. Now, before we jump into the Jack Eichel Trade Talk, I just want to pause for a second here and acknowledge our channel sponsor, Manscaped. Top Shelf Hockey is proud to be sponsored by Manscaped. Of course, with Manscaped, we have a special offer here for all Top Shelf Hockey viewers where you can get 20% off and free shipping into all orders at manscaped.com. Now, of course, Manscaped just launched a brand new Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, which is a fantastic product. They've taken the level up here, even again with the skin-safe replaceable blades. It's waterproof, it's wireless charging, has a travel lock on it, as well as a nice light so you don't miss what you're doing. So certainly a terrific product. Now, many people associate Manscaped with their trimmers, which is certainly kind of their top product, but they do have a lot of other great options as well, including what they call the Weed Whacker, which is another trimmer for your ears and nose. And they have a variety of deodorants and sprays as well, which also keep you fresh and are terrific as well. So certainly Manscaped has a lot to offer, and we certainly highly recommend all of their products. So check out manscaped.com and use promo code TSH for 20% off and free shipping. So thanks very much for taking the time to watch that sponsored video. I greatly appreciate that. Now, as I mentioned as well, I want to look at an article that came out in BuffaloNews.com regarding Jack Eichel. Obviously, they explore all the different trade scenarios, given the fact that it's been made clear again by Elliot Friedman that not only does Eichel likely want out of Buffalo, but he feels at this point that the Buffalo Sabres do not want to bring him back, and they want to move on here as well. It really makes it sound for sure that the relationship is irreparable at this point, and they're definitely heading for a divorce. And it likely happens sooner than later, given the fact that you have expansion coming up. And clearly, they're depending on what teams are going to want to know what's going on before that to get their roster sorted out. And secondly, they might be able to recoup an additional 1 or 2 first-round picks, possibly, including one that could be in this year's NHL draft. So they likely want to get the deal done either at the draft or slightly before, if possible. Now, I think it's fair to say that 30 other teams in the NHL will likely be calling Buffalo. I don't see Seattle getting into the mix here because they don't really have much of anything they can offer right now besides some draft picks. So obviously a deal with Seattle would have to come much later, and that's very unlikely at this point. However, the Sabres are going to be getting a lot of phone calls. There's no doubt. But this article I want to review here goes over 5 potential trade proposals for Eichel and different landing spots for him, and I just want to go through each one. I'll give you my thoughts on the trade proposals, and I want you to give me yours down in the comments, and we can see if we can come to a conclusion here of what is the most likely. Now, first up, we have the Anaheim Ducks. Now, the Ducks are a team we've talked about at length, being one of the more interested teams in Eichel, and a team that has a lot of assets that would intrigue Buffalo at a potential trade. So I do see the Ducks being serious contenders here, and here is what was proposed as the most likely trade package that the Sabres would be looking for from the Anaheim Ducks. They would include center Adam Henrique, mostly for salary cap purposes. He still has 3 years left on his deal. He had a good tournament with Canada at the World Championships, but for what he's getting paid in the NHL, it is a little bit hefty. But the Ducks are going to have to clear some money out, and they're going to need the Ducks to take a contract like that if a deal like this is going to go down. They also have them including top center prospect Trevor Zegras, as well as young forward Troy Terry, young goaltending prospect Lucas Dostal, and a first-round pick. Now, that is a big haul for Buffalo, and the reason that there's a little bit more maybe you might think is also because of the Henry contract. So, obviously, I do not see a scenario, though, when Zegras is included. I don't care who the Ducks are trading for, if they're going to make some big changes this offseason. Zegras, to me, is an untouchable. This kid is a phenomenal prospect who's going to be a huge star himself. To me, that would be pointless in the Ducks making this deal if Zegras is involved. I mean, they have Ryan Getzlaf there right now as the captain and the top center who can be like the mentor for these younger centers that are in the organization. So they don't really need Henrique. And if Getzlaf comes back on a shorter term contract, then, obviously they can part with Henrique for sure. But Zegras is their top prospect. Like, that's not going to happen. Zegras and Drysdale, to me, are untouchables in Anaheim, and I can see them trying their best to put together a package for Eichel that does not include either of them. But if Buffalo's insisting on it, then to me, that's no dice. Now, as far as Troy Terry goes, I can definitely see him being included. I could see them including many other prospects or younger players, such as Sam Steele, Isaac Lundestrom, even Jacob Perreault to a degree could be in there. Maybe even a guy like Max Comtois. They'd probably prefer to keep him too, but at the same time, you got to throw something of value in there. But still, I can see a different combination of guys, but not Zegras. Now, they probably would prefer not to include Lucas Dostal as well, but they do have John Gibson under a long-term contract, and this Dostal goaltender is phenomenal. At least he looks that way. So to me, he'd be great for Buffalo. So from the Sabres side of things, that would be a great haul. I just don't see the Ducks including all that. Most of that would be fine, except for the Zegras being included. You swap out Zegras for maybe something different, which is going to be tough because there's really not much else there that's really comparable. But if I'm Bob Murray and the Ducks, I'm certainly counteracting that and trying to keep Zegras and move a different piece for sure. But that's the proposal here from the Buffalo News article. Now, he also mentions the Calgary Flames here as being a contender, which to a degree I can see maybe they would be, but I'm not sure that the Flames are going to get this done. Obviously, this article does kind of weigh out the options of getting a variety of different players, but then he narrows down to what he feels that the package would be. So he has it being Matthew Tkachuk, Connor Zary, and a first-round pick. Now, that's a pretty good haul for Buffalo. They get Tkachuk, who's a great winger to build around. I'm not sure Tkachuk would be overly content being in Buffalo, so that might not go well. Connor Zary is a great prospect. The first-round pick is all good, but I don't see that happening. I think they'd be more likely to want to include Sean Monahan or Johnny Gaudreau over Matthew Tkachuk. I don't see Tkachuk being traded at all. So I think that's a non-starter for Calgary. And, obviously, I don't think that's going to happen at all. So as much as I think it'd be a good return for Buffalo, again, this deal to me is not going to make any sense for the Flames. Next up, we have the Los Angeles Kings. The trade proposal they have here for the Kings would include 2 young centers going to the Sabres, which include Alex Turcotte, Gabe Vilardi as well. They also include veteran goaltender Jonathan Quick, a first-round pick, and a third-round pick. Now, Jonathan Quick, absolutely. The Sabres need a goalie. He could be a stopgap while they continue working with youngster Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. So that, to me, makes sense. The first and third-round picks are fine as well. No problem there. But you're not going to give up Turcotte and Vilardi both. To me, you're going to give up one or the other. They still have Quinton Byfield as well. If I'm Buffalo, I'm probably pushing for Turcotte. I know Velarde's come back and played, okay, but certainly that history he has of injuries and that back problem he had before is a little bit scary, especially where you're moving on from Eichel with some health issues. So to me, I'd push for Turcotte and maybe something else, maybe an Arthur Kaliev, maybe a Samuel Fagemo, or a different piece in there instead of Velarde. But to me, that's a more realistic package here so far. I'm not sure the Kings are real crazy about moving Turcotte, but if they're going to get a guy like Eichel, they're going to have to give up one of the young centers. Many feel that Byfield is the untouchable. If the Byfield's untouchable, then you have to let Turcotte go if you're going to pull off that kind of trade. At least that's my opinion. So to me, that's a good package for the Sabres. So I would really push though for Velarde to be changed for a different player, a different prospect, but otherwise, pretty good deal, and I could see that maybe working out for both sides. Next up, we have the Minnesota Wild. Now, this trade proposal includes young forward Matthew Boldy, who's a pretty solid young forward. Of course, Nico Sturm, also another college player that the Wild have that's done okay. They got Marcus Foligno. Of course, he's familiar with Buffalo. He used to play there before. Can add some leadership and some grit. Obviously, not afraid to drop the gloves. And a first-round pick as well. For the Minnesota Wild, the one player who is likely untouchable there is Marco Rossi. They're obviously not moving Kaprizov, of course, the Rookie of the Year, who's going to win this year. He's obviously untouchable. I would assume a guy like Eriksson Ek's probably untouchable too. Fiala, for the most part, they wouldn't want to, but they might have to go down that road if an Eichel trade is to be, come together here. So as much as this deal is decent for the Wild, I'm not sure that the Sabres can't do better. Obviously, I love the idea of having the first-round pick. I love Matthew Boldy. He's a good, solid young player. That makes sense. I don't mind Nico Sturm. I mean, Marcus Foligno's a good additional in there, for cap purposes and, a veteran guy, but still, I'm not sure I really need Foligno on this roster. I'd rather have something a little bit more substantial like a Fiala, and if, obviously I don't expect to necessarily get that in this scenario, so I'm not sure that I really would want to pull the trigger on that. And lastly here, the fifth trade proposal they go over includes the New York Rangers. Of course, the Rangers, along with the Kings, have been widely considered the top two in most people's opinions. This trade proposal includes forwards Pavel Buchnevich, youngster Vitaly Kravtsov, Alex Georgiev, and a first-round pick. Now, this is a pretty good trade as well, but to me, if the Rangers are able to pull off a trade for Eichel and they don't have to give up either Kakko or Lafreniere, to me, that's a pretty darn good deal for them. Now, of course, Kravtsov's a pretty dynamic young forward. Of course, you get the first-round pick in there. You get yourself a goaltender in Georgiev. Not really sure how high his ceiling is. Buchnevich as well, who's had a couple of good seasons now with the Rangers, but not the most awesome package that the Rangers could put together. I think the Rangers could certainly do better there. I mean, I would think that there would be at least one defenseman going out. They have a slew of young defensemen. They could certainly, afford to put one of them in there. Obviously they, if they can keep K'Andre Miller, Kakko, and Lafreniere out of this deal, then that's a bit of a fleecing by the Rangers, but at the same time, I understand they're taking on some risk here with Eichel's injury, but to me, the deal there that makes the most sense is the Los Angeles Kings. I think the Rangers would have to up the ante on that deal myself. I don't know if they can get it done as is, and some of the other deals, as much as they're decent trade offers, I just don't know that the other teams really pull the trigger on that. Like with Anaheim, I don't think Zegras is included. I don't think Matthew Tkachuk's included for Calgary, and there's going to be many other teams as well. So based on this article and these 5 trade proposals, which one do you think is the best one? Of course, keep in mind as well, I don't want to see comments saying these trade proposals are this or that. They're not my ideas. This is just a news article that we're talking about and saying what we think. So leave your comments down below and we'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.